My topic is touching the emotional gods of the Bhar people. It is often said by many so-called experts and development exponents that emotions should not come in the way of facts and figures. Nobody can question that 2 and 2 makes 4. But when it comes to human relationship, it is not always figures that count. Feeling the emotions of the people and understanding them is crucial in any dealings, especially when the issue involves colossal proportions. And I believe this Tipaimukh Dam is an issue which involves colossal proportions. Today, proposed Tipaimukh Dam has become an emotional issue with many players countering the mega dam project that will submerge 275.5 square kilometers area. That's a big area. Even as emotions are high in the Bhar Hills I included in this because this issue involved a dam involved Mizoram site, which is called Sungte Hills, and the Rengkai range in Manipur. It's in Manipur, but it's, for better understanding, I clubbed these 3 regions together. That's called Bhar Hills. Inhabited areas along the Mizoram-Manipur borders. The central government seems to be more worried about the plight of the Bangladeshis than the genuine concerns of its own citizens. So far, the government of India has held around 10 talks with Bangladesh. On the other hand, neither the center nor the government of Manipur has held talks with the representative of the Bhar people, at least at the official level, serious level talks, especially after the change of hands after NIPCO quit, after NSPC came in. So there's no talks so far. Since it is the Bhars who are going to be the most affected, ecologically, culturally, historically, and politically, they have every right to be emotional. The National Labour Organization Convention clearly states this. Indigenous and tribal people shall enjoy the full measure of human rights and fundamental freedoms without a hindrance or discrimination. No form of force or coercion shall be used in violation of the human rights and fundamental freedoms of the people concerned. This is one of the strongest statements that ever made on indigenous issues. To feel the emotions of the Bhar tribe, there's a need for a look into who are the indigenous or indigenous community first. In our process of development, indigenous tribes is just another word. Another word, which is very simple to many people. I mean, at least for the people, I'm talking about the people, the outsiders, so-called outsiders. It's very easy, they'll just say, they are indigenous people. But to us, it's a big issue. It's a question of survival, it's a question of destruction. So according to the United Nations, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they are the first people, the tribal people, the aboriginals who are the first inhabitants of that area. Prior to this, the Bhars, those areas that are inhabited by the Bhars right now, we don't know who were there. So the Bhars are the original inhabitant of this place. That's what I wanted to point out in this paper. We have no historical records that prove that other communities have settled there prior to this. So the land, according to the International Labour Organization statement, clearly states that this should belong to the indigenous tribe, the first people who ever settled there. So I'll jump to this day. Who are they? I have told about who are they, and they have unique features. Like we have, the Bhar people who inherited, who inhabited that area. They have a distinct culture. They have unique features. The government in India, the government gives protection to the tribals through various laws. Though there are many acts, the most important I felt is the STN, Forest Dwellers Act 2006. And the Constitution 8 Amendment. That one, I believe, you have to refer some other things. You can download it from the net if you want, for more information on that. And number 2, they have different interpretation of the word development. Yesterday we talked a bit about development. And some of the paper presenters, they talk about development and what is development to certain degree of people. Here, our friend said development to Punjab area, talk about Punjab. Then we talk about development. The whole issue is development. So we talk about different perspective. So here also the tribal people, the indigenous people, they have a different meaning of the word development. The meaning of development is vague, and in essence it can be different from people to people and from region to region. For most indigenous people, for most indigenous communities, development is a term coined by people who come from outside their system. Indigenous tribes have survived the onslaught of nature and its forces for hundreds of years. But the forces of the so-called developed world in recent times have become their biggest threat to their very existence. So development to them means destruction or even extinction. But our paper main aim is not to talk on that, but as we said, touching the emotional core. So we will try to talk more on that, how on this thing. Here I have given one example. No power, no development is a myth. What is development in its true form? Most people think that development is about having washing machines, refrigerators, like we mentioned before, computers, internet, which are powered by electricity. Not this. Electric current can also be produced from different sources besides dams. Sociological studies have shown that most tribal societies existed well within their means and conveniences. Let's take the example of the bars in barrios. Ever since the gospel reached them back in 1910 at Sanborn village, they have lived for 100 years now without real electricity. To top it all, they have achieved a great degree of development. I quote that development. There's a different meaning to them. At their own pace, through grit and determination, with little government intervention. The governments at the center and at the state have many survival lessons to learn from these people. However, today we are at a stage when we have to ask questions like, has a study ever been carried out to understand what the people really need? No. How can the NHPC or the government at the center and the state know they have is for the betterment of the lives? There is a common saying among anti-dam activists that dams' main purpose is to provide power to the powerful and not the powerless. This will become a reality if authorities fail to study the needs of the people and implement their development agenda. There means the people's agenda, their own agenda. Development people are having their own agenda on development. What ideas, what kind of development they need. Number 3, they need safeguards. At a time when corporate agenda is eating up the world's natural resources and pushing people out of their lands, these tribes need socio-economic and political security to sustain their way of life. Many a times, political leaders from the majority claim they have the backing of the majority while deciding the future of India without considering the needs of a tiny population. They have failed to realize that the less the number of people, more should be done to protect them. Yesterday we talked about a few people, but today, if they are endangered, we build up protection for example, tigers, elephants, especially. But why not we create something for the people, for that community? Like in the Andamans, we know that the last of the Nicobarese tribes, they are vanished. So we need special protection, which is constitutionally guaranteed. We don't want to talk about that. In India, we have many laws for protection of disabled tribes. Sadly, the laws are least implemented when needed most. In addition to the above-mentioned features of the indigenous tribes, like they need protection, they have cultures, they have rights, the possible impact of the proposed dam on the people living in Mar Hills must be looked into for a comprehensive knowledge of their needs. Number 1, we have talked about the historical impact, the fears and aspirations mentioned by Joseph. So I did not mention on that. Impact on biodiversity. She has taken up a few lines on that. Impact on ecology. That one also we have taken up yesterday. And pushing out of wildlife. That also we'll talk about that. There is very, just some 2-3 days back, I received a phone call from my village which is Dundee. And some of the villages, they have shot some wild animals, some deer, some snakes, big snakes. So still now, after so many years of hunting, the area is still very rich in various types of animals. So we need to create as a a concern, or who cares about the nature, the surrounding, awareness about these things also. So if the dam comes up, this will inevitably have an impact on their lives as well, not only the animals but the people. And just the number of fishes will be reduced. This one, Joseph mentioned, I just wanted to make a point on this. Some villages were told about, there I mentioned that the dam will become a common lake, for everyone to be able to do some fishing, and the fishes will multiply in numbers. No, the number of fishes will rise up. This is all a myth. Take for the example, Barapani, there in Shillong. It's a very good example. It's not a community property. It belongs to the poor generic company. How can such a life be implanted in the minds of the innocent villagers and simple folks? Dams instantly become the property of the agency once they are given a green signal by the government. In addition, the flowing rivers sustain very type of species and other water living creatures. It's always better to leave the river acid for many and different types of organisms to flourish. Once the river is dammed, certain species will become extinct in their own, while the other rare species will become prey at the hands of the people. Weather and climate, we don't need to talk much on that. We know, every one of us know it will have some kind of impact on weather and climate of the area. And the siltation process. Yesterday, casually, there was some talk about siltation, about some taking place in North Lake. I will not mention it here, but the process of siltation is what I fear the most. Take it for example, the area around Taifu, then Parpung area. The area is very loosely, it's based on very loose type of soil, wherein every year you have landslides occurring, especially at Taifu. Even like just recently we mentioned about Herzl area, so that area would also be affected. So to come to the next thing, social impact, loss of livelihood. With large area of land being submerged and the cultivable land reduced, hundreds of people who depended on zooming and other forest products will have a hard time trying to earn a living. This will, in the long run, create unnecessary frictions between locals and the officials. Migration of displacement. Whether we like it or not, migration takes place whenever there are mega dams or development projects. It could be outsiders, I call it, coming to the project site, or people coming to the ground zero. Sadly, it is always the latter, or moving out of the ground zero. People coming in, people moving out. Sadly, it is always the people who are moving out that suffers the most. They are made to leave their homes and lands. People coming from other places get either good jobs due to their skills or eligibility, whereas the indigenous tribes who are at the most fit to do menial jobs are pushed to the periphery. Yesterday we talked about making the periphery the central point. But how we do that, the one also will be covered in the conclusion part of my paper. Example, if you just look at the Chinese, yesterday David mentioned about the project in China. There was Yangtze River, the 12 hydroelectric city dams that have been pushed to the people, forced on the people. The Chinese government had that the dam had brought a great success, but journalists who have gone there reviewed the real picture. You can read it from there, the copy. And the social news you can mention about, it's right now happening there in the villages. The social news like prostitution. It's not in open. The army have gone in. Wherever the army goes, it comes along with it. As a just simple example, poverty. Poverty can, instead of, dam, instead of making the life easier for the people, it could simply make the issue of poverty bigger. A social gap between the rich and have-nots. Now we are living at a stage where the standard of living is not that high, not that low, despite the negligence by the government. And just a few minutes back, we have mentioned about the dam being an instrument of development. Taking the example of Mizoram, wherein has taken place, this bonus, everything. But why Mizoram became, a model of development for other northeastern states? I believe this one is possible only through political means, a clear-cut political solution to the issue. As you already know, the area has become already a hotbed for militants who are having also all sorts of interests. Not only the militants, the Mar people also as a whole, they have an interest in this area. I have mentioned the reasons why they are interested in that. And the politics of compensation, it is a common feature that wherever mega dams have taken place, Derry Dam, from Derry to Kruger Dam, Berian Kruger Dam. I just like to mention it here. In 2005, December 14, the affected villagers of Kruger Dam protested against the government for not keeping its word on the compensation package. And the result was the death of 3 protesters due to police fighting and over 25 injured during that time. Manipur government had promised to give compensation, resettlement and rehabilitation to the affected areas, but none of this so far has been materialized so far. But finally, after much this thing, as a rehabilitation policy, the government paid rupees 3,000 family instead of rupees 30,000. It's just shocking. It has promised to give rupees 30,000, and this, it has come down to such a low level. Rupees 50,000. This was a report on this. The affected town people affected from them. But is there a way out from all this, fears, aspirations, hopes, and all this? I believe there is a way out. One is to neglect the others. All the reasons, the things we have mentioned, all of us, we have mentioned something or the other. All those are interlinked. And if one is neglected, the others will fall apart. Fulfilling one aspect and ignoring the others is not a pragmatic approach in margins. Tipaimukh Dam issue has been discussed many times in student forums, HSA, Maria Udro, and all other sorts of forums. I have analyzed through all this. I have taken in several discussions. I have analyzed that political solution is the only way out, and these solutions can be implemented through legislation. The solutions I mentioned there, legislation, government has already framed a law, like the 6 status, where the administration can be run by the real people at the local level, effectively. Now we have seen several changes of hands of the dam. It has given to the wrong people. We said the Manipur government has given to the wrong people many times. Now also, how do we know that NHPC is the right implementing agencies when the people, the Mar people, I'm talking about the Mar people of that area, is not the deciding factor. The government of Manipur may not be responsible. Who should be held responsible? How can we make the government of Manipur responsible? We cannot do that. So there must be a system in place through legislation. A certain modification of the laws that has already been there. It can be creation of some administration for them, for the area where the people who have decided that whether they like it or not should be held accountable. It should be the hard people who do that. So there should be a system wherein the people have a feeling that they are the deciders of their fate. And the Madhya have included here education and food transport. That is, earlier it always was my first, education and transport and what should be done for the development of this region, Tipaimukh Dam region, Mar Hills. I always put education as the first, but now I have changed. I have put political solution. Because the good example is Sungte Hills Development Council. There is no development taking place. Why? Because there is no clarity on who should function, who should do the job. So the political solution is the only solution. If the government of India or Manipur government wants to deal with the Mar people in that area, that's the only way. And education, transport, everything can come in later. They should decide the Department of Education, Department of Transport, in Department of Culture, all these things will be under the 6 schedule, this thing. Just like we have the NCEs, District Autonomous District Council. And to conclude my seminar, I have taken a bit extra time, I believe, but I just want to make one more point in the concluding remark. We outsiders living in towns and cities are doing our best at present is to defer the government decisions. We can't do much about it, or to educate the people. Just like I said yesterday, we should not have one side, we should have both sides to our friend here. Right? One side should not be the only focus. Some people often say to me, why are you so concerned about Tipaimukh Dam? You are not even staying there anymore. My reply to them is this: in doing so, I am not forgetting my responsibility to remember the future generations of my tribe, whose language and their way of life are under threat. I believe that is what most of us feel when we try to analyze why we are participating in discussion forums like this. And with this in mind, I'd like to highlight a real-life experience, a real-life experiment with power generation in my hills. For 2 years, my father operated the first and perhaps will be the only private electricity, generating plant in our hills. We had this thing. We use a rice mill dynamo, and in my village we have 12 rice mill size, bigger and it benefited us in many ways as a village. The whole community, the whole village was lighted up. People from other villages will come. They say, Damde is like a small city in itself. During Christmas and other things. Every night we operated for 3 hours. 3 hours for 2 years. And we have the bread was very economical in the sense when compared to the price of kerosene oil. But after a few years, after 1 year, there was started some kind of friction between us and the people, village authority, So they decided they should have control over the price. They should have control over the price. They say it's too high. 1 tube like costs 100 rupees per month. And in the village, one house is like a straight cubicle, rectangle box. So one tube is enough. Wherein you have children studying, everything. So we said the cost of operating is very high, and the price was even lesser than the kerosene demo. Still there, they decided it should go. So what I feel that from this thing, we do not avoid the situation. What I feel in that sense is that we come to a situation where people want power, but they don't want to pay. Just like we are in Tipaimukh Dam. We want all power, but we don't want to pay. That's the same situation. I feel it's like the same situation. If the government wants to generate power in our hills, it first have to pay the more people the price for the traditional land, their social values, and other for protecting their whole system of life. Otherwise, we can never have I feel we can never have a peaceful transformation of the whole life. Like these things should come forward, these things should come forward. Political solution is everything. This is constitutionally guaranteed. And we have recently we have the demand for autonomous district council under the 6th schedule. Recently there was a press release by the district demand committee. And all those, if the mass have an inspiration for deciding something of their own, I feel that should be given to them a chance. They are not trying to secede from Manipur, they are not trying to secede from India. I think that's a logical understanding on the part of the government and the implementing agencies to take into account the whole issue of political settlement first, and then move, I believe, to other things. I believe this will, emotionally please the whole community, the hard people living in towns, villages, and other places, and it will please them. This is the only way. Otherwise, if you say the schools will come up, nobody is going to. We have been, experiencing various, and we have been exposed to various types of promises, not met. So the only promise, the first sign of promise the government can do is give the hard people the right to administer their land, their area, where they can decide their future. Thank you.
Thank you.